Hello. Warhammer Quest is back. That's right. Warhammer Community just announced that there is a brand new version of Warhammer Quest on the way. It's called Dark Water, and it is set in the mortal realms of the Age of Sigmar. So, what do we know about this brand new game? And should we be as excited as I am right now? Let's unpack it a little bit. Okay, so I am a huge fan of Warhammer Quest. It is one of the most important games in my own gaming history. It was Warhammer Quest that really got me into the Warhammer world, that brought me into a Games Workshop store and started me playing properly with all of the miniatures. And I love the game. It still, for me, is one of the best games that Games Workshop have ever released. And that 1995 version of the game, it is just incredible to me. Almost a perfect dungeon crawling experience. It's so good. Of course, there have been a few other editions of the game over the years. In 2016, the first Age of Sigmar set version was released with Silver Tower, another game that I absolutely love. It was Silver Tower that really turned me into maybe not a true believer in this case, but someone who could get on board with and enjoy what was happening in the Age of Sigmar, as well as still enjoying all of the classic fantasy stuff. Silver Tower, to me, is a brilliant sequel because it takes what's so good about the first game, it doesn't try and just copy it, it creates something new. And it did that through the sort of story game book style interactive adventure that was at the heart of Silver Tower's gameplay and its story, because you were inside the tower of a Tzeentchian Gaunt summoner. It's absolutely brilliant, and I love it a lot as well. Of course, since then, there have been other Mortal Realms versions of Warhammer Quest. We have had Shadows over Hammerhal, which was a sort of direct sequel to Silver Tower. It's compatible with that game in some ways, and it needs a Games Master, which is something a little bit different for Warhammer Quest, that I'm not as keen on that aspect of it, but it's got some great models, some brilliant Nurgle, Blight Kings in there, and then there's also Cursed City, which of course is its own saga and has had lots and lots of videos made about it on many different channels to explore all of the things that went wrong and, some of the stuff that went right with a game that looks incredible, but maybe didn't play quite as well as it could have. And then there is the only 40k example of Warhammer Quest, which is Blackstone Fortress, which is an incredible game, both in terms of gameplay, which is awesome, and the setting, the ways in which it expands and explores the 40k universe, really getting into the sort of RPG-style nooks and crannies of 41st Millennium, and the actual rollout of Blackstone Fortress meant that it was a game that was around for ages. There were loads of amazing supplements and really interesting storytelling expansions, and just a terrific game, both in the creation of it and the release of it. Oh, and I can't forget Lost Relics, which was another Age of Sigmar bookshelf version, an intro version, if you like, of Warhammer Quest that's quite hard to get hold of, but was also kind of fun as a sort of storytelling game with just one group of warband of Stormcast Eternals inside a Tzeentchian Magister's dungeon. It's kind of riffing on the Silver Tower elements of that game, but it's very much an intro game for the world. So there's your potted history of Warhammer Quest, but we've now got a brand new version that's just been announced, Warhammer Quest Dark Water, which is super exciting to me because, like I say, I love this as a franchise, as a series of games. It really gets me excited. I love a good dungeon crawl in the Warhammer worlds, and this has always been one of my favourite ways to just explore Warhammer and spend some time in the worlds of the games. So what do we actually know about this brand new game? Not an awful lot, to be honest. There's just a single image that shows what is presumably the box art for this brand new version of Warhammer Quest. We know it's called Dark Water, we know it's set in a place called Jade Abbey, and we know that is in the Mortal Realms in Ghyran. But there's not much more information to go on. Well, maybe there's a couple of things in the image itself. At first, I must admit that I was quite surprised to see this particular piece of art. It looked to me like this was set in the old world, that maybe that was a Bretonnian knight, and a damsel from Bretonnia as well. There is another human knight who could have been from one of the knightly orders of the Empire, and then there is a dwarf explorer. So that was a very, very Warhammer the Old World friendly party at the centre of the action. Of course, there's also a bit more of an 80s sword and sorcery vibe to this cover, this art, this design. Perhaps harkening back to early Hero Quest and Advanced Hero Quest, and yes, Warhammer Quest, the original version as well, but moving away for some of the art that we've seen for Age of Sigmar across other games, which is a lot more sort of gods and monsters and epic high fantasy. That's not to say that Games Workshop haven't explored different art styles across the different Warhammer Quest box covers. In fact, the Cursed City cover is a very stylized design. It doesn't really look like Shadows over Hammerhal or Silver Tower at all. So there's precedence for experimentation in this style. But another interesting thing that really jumped out at me was that this is set in the Age of Sigmar, but there are beastmen as a huge central focus of the action. Bordering both sides of the cover, we can see Pestigors, the Nurgle variety of beastmen. Now, the Beastmen as a single faction were removed from Age of Sigmar and have been reintroduced to the old world relatively recently. But we also were told that Zangors, the Tzeentchian version of Beastmen, and Pestigors, the Nurgle version, were both going to be sticking around in the Age of Sigmar and probably wouldn't be seen again in the old world. There's such an interesting precedence with this that I think is worth noting, given that Shadows over Hammerhal focused a lot on Nurgle and had a lot of Blight Kings, as we see in the background of this piece of art, but we've also seen in Silver Tower the launch of what is the modern Zangor design. They actually came with Silver Tower, which was the launch of an entire new plastic range for the Age of Sigmar Tzeentch army in 2016. Now, I know there have been rumours circulating online, which I'm probably not going to get too much into, about Nurgle and Cities of Sigmar forces that might be released in the future for Age of Sigmar, which would both be really cool. There's maybe a bit more credibility to those rumours now. We see the Cities of Sigmar, all 4 heroes apparently being Cities of Sigmar characters, and then Nurgle forces, there's demons, there's Blight Kings, there's Pestigors. There is lots of Nurgle action on this cover, lots of interesting stuff to explore. I don't know about you, but when I see things that have this kind of colour palette, this sort of murky green, and there's a lot of water, I'm always sort of reminded of Lovecraftian kind of Cthulhu sort of stuff. Maybe it's the Shadows over Innsmouth elements, and I think there's a bit of that in Nurgle anyway, but the idea that this is going to be about dark water, perhaps based on the cover art, this is about the sewers beneath one of the cities in the Mortal Realms, and the heroes from the Cities of Sigmar have got to go into those caves, into those sewers, like they did in Shadows over Hammerhal. I think that there is going to be potentially some really interesting, creepy elements to this. Again, there's not a lot to go on, but looking at the cover, there is an element that screams horror to me, that looks like it's going into a bit of a sort of creepier space than maybe we have seen in some of the other Warhammer Quests. And I'm not just saying that, because Dark Water is also the name of probably my favourite J-horror, Japanese horror film ever made. An incredible, incredible horror film, all about creepy water, very much worth checking out. I am just really excited to check out more information about this game as it starts coming out. I hope that we hear something soon. The Warcom article suggests that we're going to be hearing more information over the next few weeks. So until then, we can just sit and we can speculate. What do we think we're going to see in it? How do we think it's going to be structured? Do we think there will be a range of supplements like they did for Blackstone Fortress, but they only sort of attempted with Cursed City because of the various production issues that they had? I don't know. I would love to see. I don't want to keep collecting loads and loads of stuff and then not getting it to the table. But I also love the idea of creating new sort of scenarios and stories and being able to use a Warhammer Quest game to explore different interesting factions and corners of, in this case, the Mortal Realms. So yeah, very excited about that. Sorry to be so excited and just rambling at super speed, but I am just looking forward to hearing more about it. These are the games that get me super excited. So yes, very good stuff. And if you have been wondering where I have been, why there are no videos here on the main Jordan Sorcery channel, Fear not, I've been working in the background on a load of new content for the next couple of months. I'm very excited to share more about that. You can find out more about it on my Patreon, patreon.com/JordanSorcery. I'm going to be releasing new stuff over the next couple of months, and I have got some really exciting news as well. I'm going to be talking more about that very soon. Some cool stuff that I think people are going to enjoy, and different ways to support the channel, because I've been beavering away at some cool stuff that I cannot wait to share. So keep your eyes open on the channel. Lots of cool stuff to come. And until we find out more about Warhammer Quest, I'm just going to go and take another look at that piece of art and really start getting excited about what I think could be another fun entry into the Warhammer Quest series.